Hey everybody, Tony D with your Hollywoke hot take. Not so much Hollywoke. There's not a lot of woke stuff in the news. A little bit. But I did want to highlight a couple of things. Night Court. Remember Night Court? Sequel in the works at NBC with John Larroquette as Dan Fielding. He was on the original show. And Harry Stone's daughter as Focus. And Melissa Raunch as EP, executive producer. Um, I loved Night Court. I used to watch it. That was like early '90s, I think it was. Um, and Larroquette was really funny on it as Dan Fielding because he was the obnoxious guy. He was just always obnoxious. Um, his career kind of cratered a little bit after that because he tried to make the jump to movies, and he was in probably the worst movie I've ever seen. I think it's one of two movies I walked out of. What the hell was it called? Bronson Pinchot was the star, and Larroquette was actually the only sort of like okay guy in the entire cast. It was like he was trying to lift the whole movie by himself. Second Sight, God, that movie's awful. It's just unwatchable in my view. But he tries to make it funny, and it's just so bad. It was supposed to be kind of a sort of like almost a Ghostbusters knockoff. It was like, so I guess Night Court might have been in the '80s, but yeah. And Harry Stone, who was the original judge, had died in 2018 at 65. It's a shame. But his daughter apparently is going to play his daughter and comes back on the show, which is it's mildly interesting, but it and I don't mean this as any disrespect to Larroquette or anybody on the show or anything, but it just shows you how devoid of ideas the studios are. I mean, that they dig this deep. And poor John Larroquette, who is talented, they just don't want anything new. They're only making this because people like me might tune in because I remember the old show. I liked the old show, and then I go, well, let me see if the new show's any good. That's it. It's the only reason. There's no other reason to do a sequel to Night Court. Not really. It was a typical sitcom of that era, and it had a bunch of character actors from that era. It was a fun show, but ultimately, no one's, the show's too old, really, to bring back. If you had done it maybe 15 years ago, people would have been more excited about it. Now it's just sort of like, it just reeks of desperation, in my view. But this is Hollywood today. It's falling to pieces. And one of the reasons it's falling to pieces, and I talk about this in my book. Haha, see the tie-in? Hollywoke, another novel. Because part of the plot, see the back. I designed the back. I think it's cool. The back as well. I talk about, and it's a satire, but we talk about the driving force of, say, theaters versus on-demand services, and how that's changing the industry. And so it's changing the industry right now. Wonder Woman, 1984, is doing well, and it's been released on HBO Max, and it's right now. It's these services are doing well. Right now, they're doing well. However, in my opinion, what essentially the studios are doing is they're reducing their entire catalog into a website. And yeah, there are people who might pay for that website, but ultimately it's just a website. And they don't understand that websites, when they're new and fun, yeah, people love to come to those websites when a new website pops up, and they'll even buy a subscription or whatever if there's stuff there to do. But it's the laws of diminishing returns. Once you get sort of your core audience, it's really hard to bring new people on board. And it's almost impossible to bring back old people if they came in, decided for whatever reason they didn't want to continue and left. You can almost never get them back. Almost never. They all think it's a bottomless pit of money because they look at Netflix and their meteoric rise. But the thing was, Netflix was the first one, really. And that's what people wanted. And they said, oh, this is a great service. It's a shame they don't all have this. Well, now they all have it. So what's the point? What's the point of TV? What's the point of movies? If I can get it whenever I want, the glut of content is going to keep driving the prices down, which is great for us. But it's part of the reason I think the studios are doing like a Night Court reboot, because they have to go right for the money. There's no two ways about it. And yet, they're not quite going right for the money because they're still woke. Although I think that has more to do with the fact that it's just LA and it's Southern California, and these people still are listening to people on Twitter. But they won't eventually. When they run out of money and get desperate enough, they'll abandon those people. You watch. Because someone will come along and make a hit that is fun for the whole family, as they say, and then they'll be like, oh, let's do that. And finally, Tom Cruise. I don't know if you heard this. Tom Cruise lost his damn mind. And supposedly this is a leak, but I don't know if I believe it's a leak. But in audio obtained by The Sun, and Cruise, if I'm not mistaken, I believe he sued The Sun, or might have been one of the other papers in the UK, because they had a report that he was gay, and then he sued them for defamation, I believe. I believe that's the way it worked. And I think it was The Sun, but don't quote me. So he must be livid that this leaked, if it's a real leak. But as first reported by The Sun, after Cruise saw two crew members standing too close to one another in front of a computer screen, he told the crew, if I see you do it again, you're effing gone. And apparently they had face masks on, too. And they worked together. So Cruise is now becoming a little COVID tyrant, apparently. In audio obtained by The Sun, Cruise can be heard saying, we are the gold standard. They're back in Hollywood making movies right now because of us. Because they believe in us and what we're doing. I'm on the phone with every effing studio at night, insurance companies, producers, and they're looking at us and using us to make their movies. We are creating thousands of jobs, you MFers. I don't want to see it again ever. And you have to hear the audio. You can find it online. I can't play it for you. But, it's Cruise, like, just screaming with that Cruise delivery. You can tell it to the people who are losing their effing homes because our industry is shut down. It's not going to put food on their table or pay for their college education. That's what I sleep with every night, the future of this effing industry, Cruise said. So I'm sorry, I'm beyond your apologies. I have told you, and now I want it. And if you don't do it, you're out. We are not shutting this effing movie down. Is it understood? If I see it again, you're effing gone. And he's just screaming this. Cruise pointed out specific members of the crew, telling one, you're going to cost him his job. Am I clear? Do you understand what I want? Do you understand the responsibility that I have? He makes it about him, which I don't think it's really all about him, but because I will deal with your reason. And if you can't be reasonable and I can't deal with your logic, you're fired, Cruise continued. That's it. I trust you guys to be here. It must be very stressful to work for Tom Cruise. I gotta imagine. Mission Impossible 7 was recently hit with delays in October when 12 people on the set in Italy tested positive for beer virus. Production resumed a week later and returned to the UK 2 weeks ago. Yeah, that's bad because in Italy they had a really bad strain. So, although the question is, oh, they have a link to the audio. So this is on Variety. So if you find the article on Variety about Tom Cruise, they have a link to the audio, and it's epic. It's epic. It's an epic meltdown of a celebrity. So, but I don't know why they picked Italy. Why would you shoot in Italy? That's one of the worst places for the beer virus. They had it really bad. They had a bad strain of it. Is the word? It was probably the same strain that ended up in New Jersey and New York. Probably more deadly than what was out west. Probably because out west, it was probably brought in by someone from China, and by then it maybe had died down a bit, whereas in Italy it was still strong, I guess. I don't know. But Tom Cruise just cracks me up. I mean, he's a great actor. He really is. He really is good. When he's in, a movie that's critically acclaimed movie, really when he's in anything, he sort of puts his all. I mean, and he's always very intense. But, when he's in a movie where he has to act, he's really good. He doesn't go halfway with anything. As my good friend CB said, I celebrate the entire catalog of Tom Cruise. Although I'm not like a huge Mission Impossible fan. I've watched a couple of the movies. I watched the one directed by the guy who directed the Incredibles. I thought that was good. I mean, I didn't like it initially. I thought they kind of stiffed Peter Graves, who was on the original TV show. And they kind of, he had some input, and they kind of ignored him, and it was a shame. But they kind of took the Peter Graves character and sort of sacrificed him in order to, I think, to kind of build up Tom Cruise's character, which I don't know. I don't feel that's necessary. First off, I mean, even at the time, and I guess that was in the 90s, late 90s, Mission Impossible, I mean, hardly anybody remembered the damn show to begin with. I mean, it was, they knew the music, and maybe they were vaguely familiar with the show, but it wasn't like they were going to remember the story. So it didn't really matter. But, Peter Graves made the show. He was the star, and I wish they'd given him like a really good send-off or something, but he was very old at the time. But that's Hollywood for you. That's Hollywood. They just go to the next guy. And, Cruise is under a lot of pressure. Don't think he isn't. I mean, he's still at the top of his game, and he's trying to stay there. And he stayed there for a long time. It's an impressive run, really. That they're making Mission Impossible 7. I mean, and they're not spending 10 cents on that movie. They spend a lot of money on Mission Impossible. And he's right to some extent. They are looking at Mission Impossible 7 to see if they could save the damn movie industry. Unfortunately, I think Tom's putting his efforts in the wrong place. But, he's not a politician. There's only so much he can do in that area. But he does have millions of dollars. I mean, the real problem is, of course, Gavin Newsom and the Democrats. They run California, and they're running it into the ground. They don't seem to care. And even as they open up the movie industry, they're crushing small businesses. Just crushing them. But, Tom Cruise is just trying to save his little part of the world, which is the movie industry. Good for him. I'd like to see him save the movie industry. I don't know what you're going to do about movie theaters until these idiots give up the Great Reset and their nonsense with the beer virus, but maybe it'll happen. It's just a shame that someone with his money and influence, he could run for governor. He'd win. I think he'd win. I think he'd win handily. I think Gavin Newsom would be crushed under a Tom Cruise. Just absolutely crushed. And I think Tom Cruise, knowing him, he would just put 1,000% of his effort into becoming the greatest governor who ever lived. And, unlike Arnold Schwarzenegger, he could also become president. I mean, Tom Cruise, people would vote for Tom Cruise. I think they would. I'd consider voting for him. I mean, but, the Scientology thing would probably be a drag on him in a national election, but not in California. No. In California, the Scientologists would come out in droves. They would move like half the church to California just to vote for him, I'm sure. Because he's, up there. But, it's the beer virus lockdown. It's hurting everybody. Even Tom Cruise. I'm sympathetic. He shouldn't even have to do this. The science to me is clear. And it's going to come out. It's going to come out. You're going to know. You're going to know that you were bamboozled. Not that it didn't exist, but that they exaggerated the claims, and they're gonna act like, oh, this news science. Oh, we didn't know. We didn't know. Sorry, your business was destroyed. Sorry, the entire movie industry no longer is in theaters and is now on your phone. You got to watch it on your phone. You don't get to go to a movie theater and eat popcorn anymore. Sorry. Oops.